One of the gaps that I found, even I would say larger than just the sort of science to engineering transition, has been we're all at some level looking at medical devices, and there's early stage, fast moving tech startups and medical device companies are pretty far apart on a lot of cultural indices. I like to give, lately I've been giving examples of two different companies that are off axis because it helps people think of it. If you think about Instagram, for instance, they were purchased for $1 billion when they were less than 20 people. And it's a very valuable company, but you can imagine at that scale of the organization, there were a lot of rank and file people who were making decisions every day that were worth millions of dollars. And the way that you run an organization like that is investing individuals with an extremely high degree of autonomy, hiring right, and just trusting them and letting them run. And that's how an academic lab, high-performing academic lab works in a lot of, I imagine, early-stage tech startups. On the other side, think of McDonald's. McDonald's is also a very valuable company, but their model is really different because it's like McDonald's doesn't even own the stores. They have high turnover of employees. So McDonald's itself is actually like the process. It's the system that people can plug into. And it allows for very successful company to operate with high school graduates, totally different than Instagram, but also a very valuable model. Now, medical device, in order to manage risk, is extremely process driven. And so like on that spectrum, the medical device industry operates a lot more closely to McDonald's because the company is actually the design history file. The company is the quality management system. The company are the processes that reliably make devices. But that's so antithetical to the way that a lot of the innovative scientists and engineers are coming in and wanting to do things and wanting to be managed. It produces a lot of really interesting things that have to be negotiated, and it requires a lot of communication.
One of the biggest challenges we've had over the year is getting engineers to accept fuzzy requirements, because you don't know a lot of times until you build it and you test like what the biological system will do in the presence of this. And so if we think we need something like this and we want some adaptability so that we can explore over here and a little over here, right? And so it depends, as Mary Lou, you mentioned, it's like setting the requirements as a later stage objective. And it depends on what phase you're at in the company. And so I think, Sumner, you guys have probably de-risked some of the science already. So you have a much better idea of what the requirements are that you need to build to. And you're shortcutting some of the steps that maybe Mary Lou and I had to learn the hard way through figuring things out, because we had to build our own chips. You know, I mentioned we built 4 generations of systems, and each system had its own custom ASIC that went with it. And each ASIC, when you design an ASIC, it takes, say, 6 months. And then it takes, say, 6 months to see the first parts out of fab. So you're committing to at least a year, even for like prototype level ASICs, like you're doing these fast, quick chips. When you get to like actual production design, we're talking about like 12-month design cycles on top of a 6-month fab. So it takes a lot of time. And you really have to get, people who are experts at designing chips and love requirements and say, we just need to hit this gain bandwidth product or this data throughput or this compression ratio, getting them to accept that we don't know. And we're going to figure it out with this chip. And we just need some knobs to turn so that we can do that, so that we can get to the next step. It's one of the challenges that I feel like we faced as a company, is just balancing how locked in we want to make our requirements and like definitive for the engineering side versus having some flexibility so that we are able to learn and really evolve in time.
So we have the have to have and the nice to have, and we try to amplify that nice to have. And we do make chips too, and work with the big fabs of the world who often say, when you want to do something, they have no experience in that. Of course, you have no experience in that. No one has experience in that. So let's have the experience together. That's not sufficient. What's sufficient is spending a lot of time there. I get on the whiteboard and start going through the math and the equations and the pictures, and I know I've won once I get an engineer from wherever I am in China, Taiwan, Japan, wherever, Korea, or other countries too, to get on the board with me and start writing equations or correct me. Then I want it's all over, because everyone will participate in the room. And then they bring in the person that's done nothing but that process on that machine for a decade and knows every process window that you can get, then you can get something really different out of them, with different performance, with more of the nice to have, so you can explore the bigger range of space that you want to, as long as you're paying all the money to make a new chip. Why not have some more capability, because it does take so long. But yes, it's hard to convince people, especially at the fab, because they just want to ship what they got, or they want what they really want. There's two axes of creativity. You've got this one down here. We speak it like I invented it, I created it, whatever, my idea. The other one is I made 1 million units a day of that. That is creativity. They created 1 million units that day of something. So we want to be up and to the right. And so for that, you need to speak those two languages. And so I spend a lot of time sleeping on the factory floors of the world, in the little meeting rooms with the whiteboards, with the engineers that control that, so that we can push those processes further, since we're spending the money for the new chips anyway.